He defeated over 60 men in combat, refused allegiance to any master, and lived like a wandering ghost on the margins of samurai society. Miyamoto Musashi is often remembered as Japan's greatest swordsman, but there's something deeper about him that still resonates centuries later. It's not just how he fought, but how he thought. In a world built on rigid codes, deep loyalties, and institutional authority, Musashi stood apart. He rejected the traditional samurai path, refused to align himself with any fencing school, and dismissed the idea that mastery could be taught in a classroom. He lived by his own code, and in doing so, carved a philosophy that still speaks to modern-day seekers, rebels, and creatives. This is the story of how one man's radical individualism clashed with Japan's most sacred traditions, and why Musashi's rejection of schools and authority still matters in our world today. Welcome to the unfolding journey. Here on this channel, we dive deep into history, philosophy, myth, and meaning, uncovering forgotten truths and timeless insights. If you're someone who seeks wisdom in the cracks between tradition and rebellion, this is your place. Now let's dive into Musashi's world. The Age of the Sword, Japan's structure and tradition. To understand Musashi's radical stance, we first have to understand the world he lived in. Japan during the late 16th and early 17th centuries was a country in transition. It was the end of the Sengoku period, an age of civil war where powerful warlords fought for control. Chaos defined the era, but out of this chaos, structure began to emerge. The Tokugawa shogunate soon rose to power, ushering in a new era of peace and strict social order. With peace came structure, and with structure came hierarchy. Samurai, once roaming warriors, were now expected to become bureaucrats and peacekeepers. They were bound to their lords, their schools, and to Bushido, the code of conduct that emphasized honor, loyalty, obedience, and self-discipline. Swordsmanship wasn't just a skill. It was a symbol of one's place in society, learned through official schools and passed down from master to student. Authority reigned supreme. To be a swordsman was to be part of a lineage, obedient to one's teacher, loyal to one's school, faithful to a system. But Musashi had no school, and he answered to no one. Musashi's rejection of the mainstream path. Born in 1584, Musashi came of age in this transformative period. At just 13 years old, he fought and killed his first opponent. By his 20s, he had already gained fame for defeating members of the elite Yoshioka school, one of the most prestigious fencing schools in Kyoto. It was not just that he beat them, he humiliated them. He rejected their technique, disrespected their rules, and ultimately dismantled their legacy. What's important is that Musashi didn't just fight other swordsmen. He rejected what they represented. The formal schools of martial arts, the rigid adherence to lineage, and the blind loyalty to institutions. Unlike most samurai, Musashi never became a retainer of a lord. He never joined a dojo. He never accepted disciples in the traditional sense. Instead, he wandered. He lived alone. He developed his own style, the two heavens as one, Nitten Ichiryu. A two-sword technique that broke from tradition and emphasized fluidity, adaptability, and independence. His duels weren't just tests of skill, they were statements. Each fight declared, "I do not follow your rules." This made him a dangerous figure, not just physically, but ideologically. Musashi wasn't just outside the system. He was beyond it, the way of walking alone. Individualism as philosophy. Musashi's philosophy is best captured in his later writings, especially his short but powerful work Dakodo, The Way of Walking Alone. Written just days before his death, it outlines 21 precepts that reflect his entire life's journey. It's not a guide to swordsmanship. It's a guide to self-mastery. And its core message is radical individualism. Some of the lines include, "Do not seek pleasure for its own sake. Do not depend on a partial feeling. Do not hold on to possessions you no longer need. Respect Buddha and the gods without counting on their help. But perhaps most tellingly, do not be guided by the feeling of lust or love. Do not collect weapons or practice with weapons beyond what is useful." These statements fly in the face of samurai tradition. While others worshipped their blades and clung to ritual, Musashi stripped everything down to essentials. He sought not status, not glory, but truth through experience. In the Book of Five Rings, his most famous text, Musashi emphasizes direct experience over theory. He warns against being fooled by other schools, and urges the practitioner to see the reality of combat, not the illusion of style. For Musashi, truth didn't come from lineage, it came from doing. He was not anti-discipline, but he was anti-dogma. Musashi versus the schools, a war of ideas. To some, Musashi's rejection of schools may seem like arrogance. Why refuse the wisdom passed down through generations? Why isolate yourself? But to Musashi, schools represented a trap, a rigid system that rewarded conformity and stagnation. In his eyes, schools became more concerned with preserving tradition than with discovering truth. They trained students to mimic, not to think. Musashi's own words are clear. You must understand that there is more than one path to the top of the mountain. This is where his genius lies, not just in his sword, but in his mindset. He believed that schools created blind spots, that by adhering too strictly to one doctrine, you became predictable, limited, and ultimately vulnerable. His solution? Adapt constantly. Never settle into form. Never attach to authority. In modern terms, Musashi was a systems disruptor. A maverick. Someone who believed that institutions, once useful, could quickly become cages. He advocated for a kind of intellectual nomadism, a refusal to plant your flag and call any one idea home. This put him in conflict not just with schools of martial arts, but with the entire social order. Lessons for today, the modern Musashi. So why does this matter to us today? Because the tension between individualism and tradition is more relevant than ever. In a world dominated by algorithms, credentialism, and echo chambers, Musashi's philosophy is a powerful reminder to step off the beaten path. He teaches us to question authority, not blindly but thoughtfully. Pursue mastery through direct experience, not just theoretical knowledge. Value adaptability over rigid ideology. Strip away the unnecessary and focus on the essence. Whether you're an artist, entrepreneur, martial artist, or simply a seeker of wisdom, Musashi's way offers a map, not to follow, but to reflect. He challenges us to ask, am I walking my own path, or am I just repeating someone else's steps? In rejecting schools and systems, Musashi wasn't being rebellious for the sake of it. He was carving out space for genuine freedom, freedom of thought, movement, and being. And in an age where so many of us are searching for meaning, direction, and authenticity, Musashi's example reminds us that the way isn't given. It's earned. It's walked. Alone. Musashi lived in a time of swords. We live in a time of screens. But the human search for truth, freedom, and mastery remains unchanged. His rejection of schools wasn't just a personal choice. It was a philosophical stance. One that still echoes centuries later. In a world that often pushes us to conform, follow, and subscribe, Musashi shows us another way, the way of walking alone. If you found value in this exploration of Musashi's life and philosophy, make sure to subscribe to The Unfolding Journey. Here, we dive into the lives of warriors, sages, artists, and thinkers, always searching for the deeper truths that can guide our own journey. So join us. Hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Your journey is just beginning.